Welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South, episode 199. Yes, we're one away from 200 episodes, and it is about that time where everyone is kind of gearing up, taking their notes, and doing their thing for the fantasy football drafts. And I wanted to bring on someone that knows football in and out, is a great evaluator of talent. That would be Mr. Brandon Howard from The Athletic. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on, man. And before we get started, I wanted to give you your flowers. You've been pounding the pavement for quite some time, trying to get everything off the ground, been watching your journey, and you are the true definition of, I don't know if anyone's ever read the book, The Alchemist, but just being on your own journey and making your dreams come true. I see that a lot of that in you, man, and I just want to encourage you to keep going. And I'm very proud of you and all you've done.
I appreciate that. I received that, man. Thank you. Thank you so much, man. It means a lot. It means a lot, man. Yeah, I didn't know that was coming. Wow. Okay, thanks.
No, for sure.
But before we get started, kind of diving into fantasy football and talking about different players and teams and different things, I always have the get off your chest segment where I talk about something that is either on my mind or bothering me or something of that nature. But this episode we're talking about a guy that actually used to play in the AFC South, deciding he's going to hang him up. That would be Mr. Corey Davis, a wide receiver for the New York Jets. He's decided that at age 28, he is stepping away from the game. Now, he did not say he is retiring. Just want to get that clear, everyone. He did not say he's retiring. However, he is stepping away from the game. He's leaving at $10 million, partially guaranteed, on the table. Now, plenty will talk about that and talk about the situation in terms of the wide receiver room and things like that in New York. It was a possibility that he would not be there or have to take a pay cut to stay. However, he's on a different journey. Like you mentioned, me being on a different journey, Alchemist, he's definitely on a different journey in what he wants to do. He's going to spend more time with his family and things like that. For those that aren't aware of Corey Davis's career, of course, he was the 5th overall pick in the 2017 draft by the Tennessee Titans out of Western Michigan. He was a guy that a lot of people kept having hopes for in Tennessee, but he never quite got to the level that some people wanted him to get to until maybe the last year that he was here in Tennessee. And now I'm in Nashville, by the way, folks. But he basically got to 984 yards his last year here in Tennessee. He was trying to get those 16 more yards. If he got those 16 more yards, they'd have had a 2,000-yard back, which for that year, Derrick Henry ran for 2,027 yards. They'd have had two 100-yard receivers as well, with A.J. Brown, who topped 1,000 yards, and Corey Davis, however, fell 16 yards short. Still was a great year. He went on to go with the Jets. Didn't necessarily have the impact that some thought he may, but however, he's satisfied with what he did. He's stepping away from the game. He gave no explanation. And that's the thing I also want to mention. He didn't give an explanation, but he doesn't owe anyone an explanation. It's his career. It's his life. He decided what he wanted to do, and he's stepping away from the game, and I commend him for being able to play as long as he has, being able to enjoy the game, and knowing when it is time to step away and do other things. I commend him, and I wish him well in whatever he decides to do. You got any thoughts you want to add to that, Brandon?
Nothing really, but it's just something about knowing when is the right time and when you need to do what's best for you, whether that's your physical health, your mental health, your mental well-being. It's critical to know that, and to know oneself is very valuable. So I wish him nothing but the best.
Yeah, definitely wish him the best. We'll probably, I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up down here in Tennessee at one point in time, maybe on homecoming weekend, perhaps, when a lot of the former Titans and Oilers actually show up here and flood the city. So it would be interesting to see. Yeah. They're like literally. I still remember seeing Warren Moon and guys all the way going back to the 80s, 70s, showing up with guys that played in like the 2000s and stuff like that. It was always interesting to just see that mixing collection of different players from different eras.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. But, of course, we are here. Corey Davis is definitely somebody was looking at him in fantasy in some point in time. They may not have been looking at him this year, but hey,
right,
is what it is. But we want to kind of move forward with the fantasy football talk. Now, we're going to get to the AFC South a little later, but I just want to kind of give a little bit of bring people a little bit into your thinking, Brandon, if that's okay.
No problem. Let's go.
All right. Now, I know you like mobile quarterbacks. I know that is one facet of the game that you love to talk about in terms of mobile quarterbacks and showing up and moving in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Now in fantasy football, what can you say that do they add more value being a mobile quarterback, or is it more a pocket passer game, or is there kind of a difference just depending upon what kind of league you play in?
Absolutely. Well, I think today's game lends itself more favorably to mobile quarterbacks because I feel like just defenses are too good. Defensive ends are too good these days. And the way that they can track down and hunt a quarterback, I really think it's so important to have a guy that can get out of the way. Whether that's a guy that has great pocket mobility, he has good sense of spatial awareness in the pocket, or whether that's a guy that can get out and make plays and make it an 11-on-11 game and move the chains that way with his legs. So I'm always going to lean towards a more mobile quarterback because that's a guy that can get out of the way or, make a play happen when there's no play really to be made. So that's the reason why I'm always going to, go that direction, and they can get points, for you and your fantasy team on the ground and through the air. So the more hats you can wear, the better. And that's why I'm always going to lean towards a mobile quarterback.
Okay. All right. Now, when it comes to the wide receiver position, there's been kind of, some interesting wide receivers. There's been some that, get the ball in many different ways, i.e. a Deebo Samuel.
Right.
Or there's others that get the ball, the traditional way, like Justin Jefferson, Minnesota Vikings. Now, in fantasy football, does it really matter how they get the football, or does it matter just because they get the football? You know what I'm saying?
Yes. I think that that's an interesting question. And for me, again, like I said before, the more hats you can wear, the better. So again, the more versatile you are, that's the guy that I'm going to lean towards. So a guy like Deebo, he can get it done on the ground. He can get it done through the air. And that's what I like about his game. He's a guy that makes it, so that an offensive coordinator doesn't have to substitute really. You can basically substitute with the same personnel because he can do two totally different things. He can run the ball and he can catch. And he can line up and run routes and get separation that way. Justin Jefferson, again, he's equally, effective because he's one of those guys that he's going to get great separation because he's an amazing route runner. And that's what I like about his game. So there's just so many ways you can get, a guy like Deebo Samuel the ball in his hand. And so I would be more inclined to draft a guy like that because I love that sort of versatility and a guy that can get you points in a myriad of ways. So that's the type of guy that I would like on my roster. But Justin Jefferson is a great option as well.
Yeah, they're both are pretty. It would be pretty tough to pick between those two. I definitely would say. Now, one thing that I did talk about on my last episode with Steve Weish, I talked about the offensive line play.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the preseason, we talked about offensive line play and basically how it takes a little while for that to catch up, to the regular season because there's not a lot of physicality.
Right.
Now, in fantasy football, offensive line play could have an effect as well. Right. Because, the offensive line isn't playing well. The running back can't run the football. The wide receiver doesn't have time to run routes to catch the ball. Quarterback doesn't have time to throw the football. So, in your opinion, how much does that the status of an offensive line affect where you think of picking up a particular player?
Yeah, so it definitely plays into it, and you think about it, you put it into the equation of, which guy you're going to select or draft, but at the same time, it's not everything. You look at guys that can transcend poor line play, like a Saquon Barkley, guys that know how to create, Dalvin Cook. And I'm not saying that they've had poor offensive lines. I'm just talking about the skill set in general. Um, if you get a guy like that and you look at his history, has he been productive? Are these the type of guys that, can create when the play doesn't go as initially designed? That's the type of guy I'm going to lean towards, because I understand, and this is where we get into the conversation of, an average running back. To a lot of people, yards are just yards, but they forget about situation. And, when I have a guy that can create and make a play, even though there's a stacked box and there's 8 in the box, but he can still take it the distance because he's got great footwork and he knows how to set up his blockers. That's what separates a great back from an average back. So when people talk about the running back position being devalued, I think they go a little too far, because there's guys that really know how to make a play out of nothing. And that's the separating factor. That's what separates great backs from good backs. So that's what makes a Le'Veon Bell different from a Connor. That's what makes Saquon Barkley different from any running back on the Giants roster. And that's why he's worthy of getting paid. So I don't think that people take those things into the equation when they talk about running backs. It's, yes, offensive line play is important, but why pay 5 to make 1 when 1 can get the job done? So that's where I'm at with that. So just evaluate the talent. If you see that the talent is, available and, they can, they're a good value in that slot, then go ahead and plug that guy in, and don't look back.
Yeah, definitely make a good point there. It's kind of like they all got to work in concert with each other on
Absolutely.
the field. And a good back is like the ultimate deodorant for an offensive line.
There you go. That's a great way to
totally
put it.
get it. Totally get it. Now, there is another side of the game or the field, which is defense. And, nobody really talks about when they draft a defense in fantasy football.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a great defense, and they could probably be drafted towards the end. So,
right.
Does it, in terms of looking for a fantasy defense, is a defense that actually is opportunistic better than having a defense that keeps the opposing team from scoring, or does it kind of even out?
You nailed it. Give me the team that can take the ball away. So I'm looking at a team like the Giants, who have, and I was speaking to our buddy Emery Hunt about this. They have great length in that secondary. Guys, corners that are 6'2". It's hard for a quarterback to complete a ball when you've got all those guys in this defensive secondary that are as tall as they are and got, long arms and, can get, break up passes and deflect passes, and then ultimately, get an interception. So I really think that back half of that defense is going to do a good job of, making it so that the pass rushers can get to the quarterback there and they can get a lot of coverage sacks as a result. And you can see mistakes by the quarterback. You can also see some mistakes by the defensive secondary, or by the quarterback, throwing the ball into that secondary because of the length of those corners. So give me a defense that's opportunistic, like, the Giants are going to be this year. And I think that the Seattle Seahawks, also the Browns, are not to be slept on this year. 49ers, also obviously a good one.
Okay. All right. So, I'm taking notes over here on everything. So, but yeah, I've got to have some more notes to take as well as we get more into fantasy football, talking more with the AFC South kind of side of things.
Yes.
We're going to do that and more after this commercial break on Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton.
A shift. A shift is something that happens and changes the dynamics. And that's what happened when Garrett Logistics was born. After 10 years as a sales pro in the logistics world of sporting goods, John Garrett decided to pivot to the world of freight and start a brokerage. So you're saying to yourself, why trust Garrett Logistics? Well, Garrett Logistics helps shippers improve overall workflow, along with increased on-time pickup and delivery percentages. Last-minute loads, multi-drop pickups, and more are part of the services with Garrett Logistics. They're available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., all times Central Standard Time. So give them a ring at 615-400-8484. That's 615-400-8484, or you can email them at john@garrettlogistics.co or visit their website at garrettlogistics.co. Garrett Logistics, where the motto is, it's not just freight to us, it's your business.
All right, and we are back. And like I mentioned before the commercial break, we're gonna kind of break down fantasy football just a little bit more specific towards the AFC South. Now, before I get into that, the tour in the AFC South inbox, we did have a comment from Corey Jackson. Said, "Great content. We thank you for tuning in, Corey."
Thank you, Corey.
All right, so we're gonna start off fantasy football AFC South style with the Titans. Now, of course, the big addition for the Titans this offseason was DeAndre Hopkins. Now, people were guessing, was he going to go to New England or was he going to go to the Titans? Now, he went with more familiarity in terms of offensive coordinator than he went familiarity with a head coach that people were kind of unsure the relationship with. So he's here in Tennessee. He's in a run-focused offense. Does that, in your opinion, kind of diminish some of his value in fantasy football, or does that kind of enhance it because of maybe the stacked boxes that he's probably going to, that Derrick Henry is probably going to see, giving him one-on-one opportunities?
Absolutely. I think he's going to have a lot of one-on-one opportunities because of the threat of the run, and look for him to make a lot of big plays off play action in this offense. And if there's one quarterback that I can count on to basically be super cold, basically coming off the bench, because that's what you're asking Ryan Tannehill to do. You're asking him to hand the ball off, a dink and a dunk here and there, and then go play action over the top. And that's the equivalent of taking a six-man off the bench and asking him to hit a three-pointer, in the waning seconds of a game. That's what you're asking him to do. And if there's one quarterback in the NFL that's shown and proven that he can do that, it's Ryan Tannehill. So I really expect that connection to really thrive. Maybe not at the beginning of the season, but towards the middle and the tail end of the season, I think that connection is really going to come along great.
All right. And now we talked about a little bit earlier. I'm going to ask this too. Of course, his effect fantasy football-wise now on Treylon Burks, because now Treylon Burks goes from the number one guy to the number two guy once he's back from injury, of course, obviously. So with that being there, Treylon Burks being the number two guy facing the number two corner more than likely every week.
Yes.
Does that enhance his value more this year, provided he can stay healthy?
Absolutely, and look for them to get him the ball on a lot of the quick hitters, your reverses, your jet sweeps, things of that sort. He's a weapon. He's a guy that he's an offensive weapon. You just get the ball in his hand, and he's kind of operates like those shorter, quick guys that you just want the right now stuff. Get on the ball right now, and that's the type of player that he is. And I really expect for him to thrive this year, and maybe he'll have his biggest season yet.
Okay. All right. Now, I will say that I'm excited that if we could potentially see him do more things, and hopefully that means some things that he did at Arkansas are going to be thrown in the playbook, which would be nice to see.
And it's amazing to me how these guys come into the league, and basically the offensive coordinator from college gave you the playbook on how to utilize a guy. We fell in love with a player that you saw on tape being utilized a certain way, and then suddenly we want to switch it up on him. That it just never makes sense to me. So if you go to the playbook and what he did at Arkansas and you incorporate that into your offense, you'll have a very successful player. If you don't, then you can have a failed player. But it just, the proof is in the pudding. It always boggles my mind how these guys and these offensive coordinators in the NFL try to reinvent the wheel, and I hope that the Titans are smart enough not to do that.
Well, we'll definitely see. But another thing I just want to mention, of course, we can't go talk Titans without talking Derrick Henry. Of course, new offensive line mostly this year. Aaron Brewer is still there at center. Of course, Nick Petit-Ferrer is going to be out the first 6 games, gambling suspension. You do have Brunskill at the one of the guards. You got Dillard at a tackle. Yeah, Skronsky, the first-round draft pick. Now, with all this new turnover there, essentially, I mean, do you expect that to potentially harm Derrick Henry's numbers, or can it only go up compared to what he had an offensive line last year?
I don't think the offensive line is going to be the biggest impediment to his numbers being where they were last year. I think the biggest impediment to that is Tajay Spears. I really think the world of this guy. He was my number 3 back in the 2023 NFL draft. And I think, we saw what he could do in the touchdown run he had in the last preseason game. He's got incredible vision. He just has great feel, for where to hit the hole, when to be patient, when to explode through the hole. Like he's got great instincts, and that's what you like in the back. And I think the world of this kid. If it hadn't been for the knee injury, the fact that he doesn't have an ACL, he doesn't fall that far in the draft. He goes a lot higher. So I'm really a big fan of his, and I think that he's a perfect complement to Derrick Henry, and they'd be wise to get him the ball early and often.
It's definitely going to be interesting in the ways they use him, because also, along with being a running back, he is also a very effective receiver out of the backfield.
Absolutely.
I.e., like they used Hilliard last year for the Titans. So
exactly.
It'll be interesting just to see how they kind of mix him in.
Yeah.
Now, moving on to another team in terms of mixing people in, you got Calvin Ridley added to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who already had a plethora of weapons. When you talk about Evan Ingram, you talk about Christian Kirk, you talk about Jamal Agnew, you talk about Zay Jones, ETN, of course, Trevor Lawrence. All these weapons trying to get on the field and make plays. But the one thing I wonder is, with all these weapons, does it affect their fantasy value? Does it bring it down, bring it up? What does it do to affect it?
It's tough because you got to spread that ball around, and it's going to be hard to feed all those mouths in that offense. So I honestly believe you'll see Calvin Ridley be 1,000-yard receiver this year, first year back, as long as he stays healthy. He's that type of talent. He's been training down here at Perform, and they got a chance to see this guy in action. It's like he never left the football field. And the way he gets in and out of his breaks, his explosiveness. I mean, this kid he's amazing. He's amazing, and I think that you're going to see right out the gate just how special he is, and what we didn't see, the last couple of years. I think he's rearing to go, and Christian Kirk, they're going to continue to feed him the ball. I think they force-fed him the ball basically to make sure that they got their money's worth, what they ended up paying him. But they're going to try to balance it out as best as possible, and you're going to see Etienne get the ball, have the receiving role, and Tank Bigsby is a guy that I think you're going to have to, if you play in any dynasty league, you're going to want to stash him away because he could pay big dividends later on. So, yes, you may see some of the fantasy value on some of these guys go down because they got to spread the ball around. But at the same time, there's so many plays to be made. It's a 17-game, season. And, it's possible that you would have 2,000-yard receivers. It's very possible.
It's definitely going to be interesting. It's one of the teams I said would probably put up 30 points a game this year, just with so many weapons they have. I think Evan Ingram is probably going to be the guy that's most affected, to be honest. But
yeah, and I didn't even mention him. So, he's basically a big receiver, so if they line him up power slot, basically, because that's what he is, then, I really think that another guy, that you got to try to get the ball to, and he'll be very effective from the 20-yard line in. So from the 20, expect him to make some plays as well.
All right. Now, the guy the straw that stirs the drink, I should say, that would be Trevor Lawrence. He ended the season very, very hot in guiding them to the playoffs. Now, going into this year, he's a little bit more familiar with the offense, what Doug Peterson wants, and he's probably going to push him and allow him to accept more responsibility on the offense.
Right.
Now, given what they brought in this offseason, given what they had last year, do you expect him to probably be, I would say, probably one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks drafted in a lot of fantasy drafts this year?
No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't go that far. Now if you want to say top 10 to 10 to 12, absolutely. But top 3, he's not quite there yet. Top 5, he's not quite there. But I think that this year will be very telling. And if you can keep this unit together, he does have the potential to, move the needle and jump up a couple spots there.
Okay. All right. I thought, maybe with all the offense, he might slip into the top 5 fantasy football quarterbacks. I'm not saying top 5 quarterbacks, people. Just saying top 5 fantasy.
There's a difference.
I don't want them to jump on me. I don't want them to jump on me.
Yeah.
At one point, Blake Bortles was a top fantasy quarterback, and people forget he was coming back from way down every game. That's the only reason he was. But
right.
As far as moving on from to another team that's actually trying to come back, and speaking of that, would be the Houston Texans. Now the Houston Texans offensively, there weren't much to write home about. Davis Mills being the quarterback, it just didn't kind of pan out the way that they thought it might have with Davis Mills. Of course, they drafted C.J. Stroud, but the main weapon on this team last year was Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce at running back. I mean, I still remember one play against Jacksonville. He shrugged off like 8 people and scored or had a great run. It was just pretty unbelievable.
Right.
This year they have more, kind of some vets like Robert Woods there too and Dallas Schultz. However, he's probably still going to be the main focal point of opposing defenses. Do you think that because of what he had happened last year, that he's probably going to have more of a target on him, and that's going to affect his numbers perhaps as well?
I don't really think so. I really think that his production was more of a byproduct of them making sure that he got volume, he got carries, and he's not. And I'm not saying this in a negative or disparaging way about the player itself, but not necessarily my favorite back in terms of vision, the way he operates in space, and I just think that they kind of, because of the lack of weapons on that offense, they just made sure that he got the ball in his hand because what else were they going to do? So I really think this year you're going to see them go down the field a bit. And Nico Collins, that kid's got some juice. So he's one that I would prioritize in the draft and try to make sure I come away with because that connection is beginning to thrive between he and C.J. Stroud. And Tank Dell is a guy that I pick up in the dynasty and stash him away because he's got some time to develop with Stroud as well. And just reading leverage and reading things the same way as the quarterback in that slot, I think that he's developing that type of chemistry and awareness. And in time, that's going to thrive. And we already saw it pay off in one of the preseason games already. So I really think that those are two guys to watch out for. Dameon Pierce, we'll see. I think he'll put up kind of similar numbers than he did a year ago.
Okay, well, adding on to a guy that actually put up solid numbers and a guy that actually produced, that would be Dallas Schultz. He switches teams in Texas from Dallas to Houston. A lot of times with a young quarterback, the tight end can be their best friend. I think that for him, potentially, this could be a pretty solid year. He's on a 1-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
So this could be a potentially good deal that could either net him an extension or a big deal somewhere else. I mean, do you think he's kind of in the perfect spot to get more targets just because of, a young quarterback?
Absolutely. And you can put him in a lot of combinations of situations with, high-low situations with Nico and, see if which guy comes open. And, CJ is well adept at reading that, and he'll be able to make some plays this season as well. I really can see that connection working out and thriving.
All right. Now, last but certainly not least, we do have to talk about the Indianapolis Colts. Now, I have been saying this since I saw Michael Pittman Jr. No offense to him. He's a solid, definitely a good wide receiver, but he is not a number 1 wide receiver, in my opinion. With this, the team around him, of course, they bring in Josh Downs, the rookie from North Carolina. They have a few other guys. They have Alec Pierce as well. With that, what they have around him, and then the tight end position, which they have like 50 million tight ends, and you don't know which one's going to make the roster. But with what he has around him, do you kind of like his prospects potentially of being the main guy for Anthony Richardson, or is it just going to be a kind of wait and see thing just on the development of Anthony Richardson himself?
Yeah, I think it's a wait and see thing and how they're going to deploy him, and is it going to be heavy run game, and are they just going to rely on the quick hitters, or are they going to allow him to play his game? I think that people got upset about the pick and him becoming a first rounder a little prematurely and did not go through his film. There were a lot of drops and things that just weren't his fault on film. And when you look at him, he's more than capable of being a starting NFL quarterback right now. He his downfield throwing, he's so accurate down the field, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. So I see all the bigger targets also that he has, young, big targets. And people don't talk enough about Strawn and what he could potentially become as well. I think that, he's been in that system, with the team for a bit, and I think that he could become a very good player in time. So He's got some good underrated weapons around him, and the size of those receivers as well. The big guys, that with large catching radius. So I think that they're surrounding him with the right parts on the flanks, and the only concern is in the running game. Is Jonathan Taylor going to be with them moving forward? And I'm looking forward to that combination. I was looking forward to it because it makes it so that you really have to defend that backside gate, and you have to keep that closed, or the quarterback's going to, take it around and basically hit his head on the goalpost. 250 running a 4.40. So, I really like that. If they're able to keep Jonathan Taylor on that roster, that's a playoff team just based on their run game.
Okay. All right. Now, it's definitely going to be interesting how people kind of gauge Anthony Richardson. Now, of course, we're going to have the normal talk about any black quarterback, which I dread and drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But what do you kind of think his fantasy value can kind of be? Do you think it's going to be more with his feet, or do you think it's be more with him throwing the football?
It's going to be more with his feet initially, because that's how they're going to make sure that they keep their offense on schedule and keep their offense on the field until he gets a better feel for the passing game in the NFL. The athleticism is what's going to buy him time to win games in the NFL, to have success in the NFL just most immediately, and that's what's going to allow him to thrive right now. But in time, you'll see the chemistry develop with his receivers. He knows what to expect game in and game out, how teams are going to play him, and you'll see the passing game begin to develop that much more. And it might not even take the entire season. You might get midway through the season and the light bulb will come on for this guy. So I really think that, the sky's the limit for him. It's just that what I'd be waiting to see is Jonathan Taylor going to be on this roster, because that's going to make the world of difference for me, because you got an all-world running back paired with one of the more athletic quarterbacks in the game. And if they are paired together, look out AFC South. They could come and take the AFC South by storm this season.
Oh, boy. Big teams are getting a little nervous. But, as far as, everything, of course, the AFC South is going to be interesting to just watch the development of some players, the kind of fits of others, and just overall just how the talent either gets better or stays the same. It's going to be interesting to watch, and definitely from a fantasy football perspective.
For sure.
We're kind of wrapped up everything in the AFC South and just fantasy football. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to have our game portion of the show. That is 5 questions, 2 answers, 1 choice. Could be football, could be sports, could be music, could be anything. You have to stay tuned to see what it is. On Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton.
You ever missed your mom's home-cooked meals? Well, you're not always able to get to those, but you are able to get to H&T's Home Cooking. Established in 2005, Patty Palin and her staff go out 6 days a week to create some of the best home-style meals you can taste, and at a fair price. So if you're in Nashville and you like chicken and dressings, green beans, macaroni and cheese, and other things, stop by H&T's Home Cooking. The address is 2264 Murfreesboro Pike, Nashville, Tennessee 37217, and they are open Monday through Thursday and Sunday 11 to 6:30, and Friday 11 to 7. And if you want to order online, of course, the option is available as well at hthomecooking.com, or you can call 615-367-0049. H&T's Home Cooking, food for your soul.
All right, and we are back. And like I mentioned before, we have a game. 5 questions, 2 answers, 1 choice. Brandon, Howard, are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
All right. First question. I know you like mobile quarterbacks, so I threw a mobile quarterback question in.
All right.
You got 1 game to win. You taking Cam Newton or Michael Vick?
Man, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. You know what? I'm going to go Vick. Because Vick in his prime, because we saw what he did to the Packers in that game, in overtime, and that's the type of player I want behind center. So I'm gonna go with Vick because he's a little more explosive than Cam.
Okay, all right. Miami, The clubs or the secret clubs? Which one you going to?
Oh, the secret ones. I'm never where everybody is. Never.
All right, we going music now. Trick Daddy. We're gonna go Take It to the House or Let's Go. You know, a little John flavor throwing in there. So
Oh
if you
no,
have one song you gotta pick, what you going
take
with?
it to the house. I went to West Virginia with a bunch of South Florida guys, played with a bunch of South Florida guys, so it's definitely Take It to the House.
All right. Now you've got two young tight ends for you for the Tennessee Titans and the Indianapolis Colts. We've got Chig Okonkwo or Jelani Woods. Which tight end would you take if you had to take one of those in fantasy football?
Oh man, I'm going with my main man Chig. I like Chig. I like his versatility.
Yeah, Chig is definitely one to watch for this year for me.
Yeah, and he's quite the character too. Fun interview.
Yeah, definitely. I've interviewed him. I think once.
Yeah, he's a fun guy.
Definitely. Now, for the last question, of course, the beach in the summer or the beach in the spring? Which one are you taking?
The spring. Can I choose the fall? Jesus, it's hot out there. The water is 90 degrees, bro. So I'm choosing the spring.
All right. That is 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. You are off the hot seat, and we have reached the end of the show. I want to thank you for coming on the show. If you can, tell everyone where they can find you and what all things that you are working on.
Yes, you can find my work at The Athletic Fantasy and on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at @bhoward_81. And currently just working on some of the preseason stuff and talking about a few sleepers. So stay tuned.
All right. Definitely don't sleep. Like that. But as far as everyone, thank you for tuning in to Touring the AFC South. You can find me, of course, Mike Patton, the host, on Twitter at MikePatton82. That's MikePatton 82 on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at that's THA, not THE, _general_NP. And you can find Touring the AFC South on YouTube. Hello, everybody. And you can also find, Touring the AFC South on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, you name it, we are there. Go ahead, follow, subscribe, comment, share it with your buddies, anyone you want to share it with. It's fine by me. Thank you all for tuning in to Touring the AFC South. I'm your host, Mike Patton. We are out.